John Joseph Gotti Jr. was the fifth of 13 children. A grandson of Neapolitan immigrants, he found his way as an adolescent on the streets of East New York. Car thefts, muggings. He developed a bit of a temper and a penchant for violence. By his teens, he fell in with a Gambino crew and found a mentor in Gambino underboss Neil Della Croce. Carlo Gambino, on his deathbed, passed over Della Croce and named Paul Castellano his successor as boss. Gotti was incredulous. So from the very beginning, there was a rift between John Gotti and Paul Castellano. A rift that only grew larger as Gotti expanded his gambling and loan sharking outfits while members of his crew built a drug trafficking operation. It was just a matter of time before one of them made a move, and John Gotti moved first.
Today, authorities say Gotti is being sought by the FBI for questioning in the murder of the two men who stood in his way for control of the Gambino family.
Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino family, was killed because he was upset with John Gotti and his crew being involved in narcotics. Castellano didn't want any part of narcotics. Gotti did, because it made him money.
The killing of a mafia boss is very disruptive, obviously, to the Cosa Nostra. When Gotti kills Castellano, there are rumors about who supported it and who didn't. But as a result, Gotti was, in a lot of ways, anathema to a lot of the other mobsters.
We were concerned about Gotti, but not paying that much attention to him until December of 1985, when he became the boss of the family. So he now becomes our #1 target. And with the Gambino squad, we're focusing on that.
Gotti is able to evade law enforcement for a few years, and it's a combination of having this network where he's able to insulate himself from specific crimes and specific offenses. There's also just this reality that he's untouchable.
It had been 6 years since New York City had seen a mob killing like this. Now prosecutors were forced to reckon with the fact that John Gotti had gotten to Paul Castellano before law enforcement could. And worst of all, he'd made a clean getaway. With minimal hard evidence linking Gotti to the hit, he took over control of the Gambino family with little restriction.
John Gotti bursts onto the scene in the American perception. Suddenly he's on the front page of the tabloids, and he's this persona right out of Central Casting.
John Gotti showed up at the right time in New York. You have more lavish parties happening at night. You've got bigger nightclubs. You've got more celebrities stepping out at night and, again, being photographed by the media. John Gotti is one of these guys that likes to be photographed by the paparazzi. He is called the Dapper Don.
One report said each suit cost $1,000. Gotti supposedly got angry. The suits cost $1,800.
Gotti was on the front page all the time, and the aura grows around him. The Brioni suits, and Andy Warhol does a portrait of him. He became a star. He's a murderer, he's a drug dealer, he's this and he's that. People loved him, you know what I mean? I think there's probably still people out in Howard Beach who still love him.
That's the best man around, and I'm 45 years old, the best man for me.
As far as Mr. Gotti goes, I've known him as a youngster and always as a gentleman. Whenever I see him walking, he always has a marvelous smile on his face. In fact, I admire the way he dresses.
He's always been a very respectable person in the community. Well, I find it very hard to believe what they're saying about him.
Gotti, more than anybody, was the guy who galvanized that image of the mobster in the 80s.
While the jury began to finally deliberate his case, John Gotti has apparently not lost his sense of humor.
What do you think? How come you don't listen to the tapes? How come you don't put the earphones on?
I like Julio Iglesias.
His contemporaries, however, knew that public displays of wealth and arrogance led to indictments and violence. It was another breach of their code. So while Gotti made headlines, members of other families watched begrudgingly from the shadows, namely his old ally from the Bonanno family, underboss Joseph Massino.
Massino and Gotti lived close together in the Howard Beach area, heavily residential, heavily Italian-American, and not far from JFK Airport. which explains some of the mob activities. It's an area with teachers, lawyers, and of course, infamously known for some of the mob characters who've lived there, among them being Joe Massino and John Gotti. They helped each other. Gotti's people helped Massino when they took care of the three captains. Helped them dispose of the bodies. But I don't think Gotti and Massino liked each other.
Joe Massino wanted to be the quiet Don. He did not want to have anybody know who he was. He didn't want anybody focusing on him. When he became the real full-time acknowledged boss, that's how he ran his family. He was really the antithesis of Gotti.
Massino felt that Gotti was not doing the right thing by the mob and being too showy. And Gotti didn't think highly of Massino. He thought of him as a guy that was really under his thumb. Over time, they became antagonistic.